Good evening, folks. Welcome to Wednesday Night Live. I'm your host for the first time, James Hayden. We've got LC in your corner there, and down below we've got the great Justin Wells. Tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, going from hot takes. Before the show started, we were just talking about the All-SEC team, a lot of controversial picks there, some snubs, a few that we can think of just off the top of our head. And then also we're going to be talking about, transfer portal, getting your guys' questions, and the big one, hot takes. We're going to be going into hot takes. Yeah, thanks, Roaster. If it crashes and burns, blame LC. He's letting me try it. I'm fresh off being an intern this summer, so
we're letting the kid sip his first beer and see how it goes.
So we're going to just, I guess, start us off by talking about the All-SEC team, since that's what we were talking about right before. Michael Taft was a big snub. I think Matthew Golden got snubbed. I can't remember who got snubbed on the line, but Justin, you got any opinions on that you want to start us off with?
Alfred Collins.
Yep.
What did Alfred Collins do to the coaches besides hold every team in the conference under 300 total yards except for one? What did he do wrong? He didn't even make the third team. If there was an honorable mention, he wasn't mentioned, okay? And look, maybe him and Vernon split it a little bit. I'm not sure because Vernon didn't get any love either. But there were two that were just blatant. One, Michael Taft. And that's not being a Taft homer. That's not being the biggest fan of Taft. The numbers, I at first thought, well, okay, maybe he didn't have the numbers. I went back and looked at the numbers and the grades. That was robbery. Michael Taft's numbers were significantly better. Don't understand that one. Gunnar Helm, second team. Okay, maybe Eli Stowers had a Mackey-like season. Wrong. Gunnar leads in catches, yards, touchdowns, and really being the coolest three-star from Colorado, if we're going to be honest. Didn't like those two things, but that's what I think the superlatives are for. You give a little reward to the guys for a good season, and it gives us something to talk about. It gives us something to debate. But I'd like to talk to a couple coaches about those two, Michael Taft and Gunnar Helm. I thought those were pretty blatant. Someone had mentioned to me earlier on the AP that the Helm was first team, which if the SEC doesn't see him as a first team, but All-American does, I think that's hilarious. Either way, I think Tyler Warren would probably be the better one there. At the end of the day, dude, it just didn't seem right. I thought Alfred Collins had earned it. Look, the dude's going to go in the late first round. I thought Vernon Broughton could probably have a little bit of thing either, but that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about what they did right, what they did wrong, and what we think is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for engagement for us when they do something wrong. The Michael Taft one, I was kind of on. I remember writing an article probably a month back about Taft's stats, the blind comparison between Taft and Caleb Downs. And that's been going viral again this week after he got kind of snubbed, is that Taft's numbers are more comparable to, a Jahdae Barron's, right? And his grade is the highest on the defense, the highest in the secondary. And also Alfred Collins had an 87 grade, right? So these guys are, testing elite in the analytical world, and they're getting snubbed from first, second, and third team. So, yeah, I'm curious what you think about that, LC, not seeing Michael Taft or Broughton.
Well, it's like, look, these are the types of things where, to me, this is indicative, right, of Texas being new to the league. I do think that what Justin said is really valid in the sense that this is superlatives, right? We have to spread the honey around a little bit. I don't think they're going to be able to give a lot to one particular team, but I think Taft is on there. I didn't particularly care for Ant Hill not being first team. I thought that was a little bit ridiculous. I mean, there are a couple in there. Obviously, we have a lot of players that made first, second, third team, but there were some massive omissions, and I agree with basically everybody that you guys just mentioned. When you're thinking, does this, Drew, do people care about this in the locker room?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sorry. They do. No, they do. They do. I think on the outside looking in now, for me, I know why players, and I now know why players don't get voted into these things. I mean, when you're looking at all the rosters in the SEC, it does not matter. I mean, you can look at Michael Taft. Would any of these coaches, if they're looking at players across the roster, if you have to draft, would they go with Michael Taft first? Regardless of production, the answer is no.
Right.
Gunnar Helm, there's the names that they're familiar with, players that they played against, players that they would say, man, if I could have this guy on my – Gunnar had to earn that respect this season, but they've already had their minds these guys recruit against each other all the time. So a lot of these things and a lot of these players that you do see at the top of these lists, they're kind of self-fulfilling prophecies of guys you've either played against or seen or recruited and said, man, you know, not only are these guys balling, but if I could have one guy on that roster, it'd be this guy. It's usually when coaches are voting, you're seeing an all team, an all first team, second team, third team of guys other coaches would love to have on their rosters. Michael Taft is not going to be at the top of that list in spite of his production. And I think when you go to a national scale and what the national people are looking at, they are looking at stats. They are looking at highlights in major games. It's just a different voting body and a different perspective. So it does make sense to me why some of these guys were snubbed from the standpoint of how I think these coaches are thinking when they're making these decisions. But y'all are all right. Yeah. Best defense in the country. Nah, man, like these dudes have stepped up and played great. But I think they know that internally. And honestly, at this point of the season, let's find as many chips we can put on their shoulders to close out the season.
Yeah, I mean, in Georgia got 13 of them, and Ole Miss, I think, got 10. So Texas might have been third or fourth in the all-conference selection. So it definitely is, if everyone saw that Michael Taft tweet, he said, just more motivation. Jade tweeted out his stats and was like, how, basically. So I think it is always just good fuel. And sometimes you might be wondering, you know, these kids go to UT. They don't go to, you know, Rice. Why do they need to act like they're the underdog? But it's literally whatever you can get. You know, you saw Kirby use the underdog card against Texas, and it worked well, right? So anytime,
Kirby's gonna use the underdog card for everything.
Dabo too likes to do the little old Clemson thing. Nobody believes in us, and that's like, hey, Michael's a walk-on kid. Gunnar Helm was a 3-star recruit, I believe. So these guys are just using extra motivation. But hey, dudes like Anthony Hill, right? When he got snubbed from the Butkus, and that was another one, kind of what Drew's saying. Where it does seem like these you know, whoever decides these media bodies, these coaches, and a lot of them just preseason go, oh, we like Danny Stutzman, so we're just gonna. He had a good season, so we're just gonna keep him in the right. Whereas you saw those stats also went viral. Stutzman versus Anthony Hill. I think the sacks were 1 to 7.5. But hey, we're in the business of talking about it. That's why it's fun. Sometimes we wonder, do these people watch football? But speaking of things that are fun, we're going to start getting into your hot takes. LC,
we also have a couple questions just to hit on real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah. You want to talk defensive tackles here, Justin?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and knock this one out. Nicolette in the coverage has a good statement about Jahdae Barron. I'm not going to release the source, but a good source tells me that that's going to be good news for the Horns when that comes out. I believe that's tomorrow evening. So don't be surprised if another number 7 dons the Thorpe Award for 2024. That I've got it on good word there. And then, yes, Sadir Mitchell hit the portal. And you know what? We're not surprised by most of these guys. Usually we've heard about some of these that could be headed out. Sadir was one that we had heard turn the table and the switch came on. This guy was like 2-time special teams player of the week the last month of the season. He was getting run against Arkansas, against Kentucky. I honestly thought he had kind of figured it out, which sometimes it takes different guys, different years, different times, different moments. And then he hit this morning. And so that one was a little bit of a surprise. If you'd have asked me that in October, I'd have said Sadir is gone.
Right.
I would have had zero doubt saying that. But I really did think the light turned on. I thought something had switched there, and they wanted to try to maximize what was the last of Bo Davis's recruiting. And so the number's still going to be 3. Somebody said, well, with Sadir out, they're going to take 4. No, the number right now is still 3. They want 3 veteran defensive linemen. It's going to be similar to the last cycle. They're going to take their time. There are a couple guys they have eyes on right now, but those teams are in the playoffs. And so you're not going to see anything really come out of that for at least the next few weeks. But just understand, you got to trust Sark. If this was 2021 and I'm a Texas fan, I'd be somewhat worried. I'm not. Shouldn't be. I feel like Sark has a plan. Like they knew Aaron Bryant was leaving. They knew that these guys were taking off. And so losing Sadir sucks. That man was actually the size of 2 men. He's so funny covering the team on Saturdays. He is so much bigger. Him and Cam Williams are just so much bigger than everybody else. And so I hate not having him there, but there was some work ethic problems. There was some focus problems, and maybe he needs a fresh start somewhere else. So the number's still going to be 3. Why don't they have somebody right now? Because they are taking their time. You think Sark rushes through a recruiting class? He's dang sure not going to rush through the portal process. If you remember last year, there were a lot of big names that Texas had to go for. And it's like, if those aren't culture fits, he will not bring those guys onto the roster. It's not going to happen. But you can expect three defensive linemen to come into the program before spring ball. And just give it a few more weeks because, like I said, they've got their eyes on a few guys, but coincidentally, some of those guys are still playing.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot of times fans don't realize is with the transfer portal now, the season being as long as it's ever been, is that these guys have, I believe, up to 5 days after their season ends to still enter. So a lot of the guys, Texas may end up getting and other of these big programs might end up picking up are guys in the playoff right now or dudes you don't even think are hitting the portal, and they'll end up making a switch. So this is something that'll be ongoing for probably the next 2 months before you'll really get an idea of what the full roster will look like. And then, LC, do we need to get the ad read in now?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's you know what? You know who I miss? I miss Cookie. I'd love to get maybe a solid 90 seconds of Cookie in my life. And when he's talking about that prize picks, I'd love to know how his Quinn Ewers pick is going.
What's up, y'all? Here to tell y'all about prize picks. And I got to say, when you're sports junkies like us, you got to make the games interesting every now and then. And there's no better way to make games interesting with prize picks, daily fantasy made easy. It is so much fun to get involved in this. You got the Maction, you got the Thursday night game, you got the Friday night Big Ten game, and you got all the action on Saturday. You can go into any different sport or esport and find a square to make. It's Wednesday. There's some weeknight football on, so make sure you head to Prize Picks. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's really easy. You can use Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account, all during football, basketball, hockey, or if there is an esports season as well. So y'all know I have some season-long ones looking good on the Quinn Ewers one. We'll see what happens with the Connor Weigman one. But to try to get in on the similar type of action, make sure you go to Prize Picks, get a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. Use promo code Inside Texas. That's how you get $50 once you play $5 in lineups. Use Prize Picks. Use that code Inside Texas. It is daily fantasy sports made easy.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Do you guys remember what his Connor Weigman prop was?
I don't think it was Houston. I don't know.
I wonder though if he had the under on his total yards.
I just want to ask who said Weigman was going to Houston a month ago in the group chat?
Was that you, Justin?
Oh, good job, Justin. Wow.
And you know what? I'm happy for the kid. Listen, Connor's a great kid. You talk about he grew up a Longhorn fan. That kid bled burnt orange for a good chunk of his life. Really good baseball player. He's going to get another chance at Houston. He's going to get a chance to refresh. I love that for Willie Fritz. I love that for Weigman. He's a good kid. Best of luck.
Yeah, and that's one of those where I think it probably worked out best for both of them. Marcel Reed ended up stepping up, and Weigman kind of can get out.
Absolutely.
Reset. And yes, Sam, man, we will give Justin his flowers. But yeah, guys, so we're going to get into hot takes. So we've done this before. We haven't done it since before the A&M game, speaking of Weigman. And we're going to kind of look at what you guys have to say about Texas's first season in the SEC, like what your takes are, how you felt it went. And yeah, we put a poll out on the Twitter. Make sure you're following us there at Inside Texas on Twitter and Instagram, because we do engaging stuff like this where we get a lot of, fan feedback. Like to hear from you guys and what you guys have to say and your thoughts on the game and the team and stuff. So make sure you're following on there. And to start us out, we've got JGB. So talking about Texas and the SEC. So he started out by saying Texas is the best team in the league and should have won the title. At the very least, Texas served notice that they will be a factor in the SEC. So how this is going to work is we're going to kind of rate it 1 through 5, how hot you think that take is. Drew, would you like to start us off and tell us what you think if Texas still is the best team in the league, being that they fell to Georgia a couple times this year?
You're not the best team in the league unless you're the best team in the league. We're no different than Ole Miss. We're no different than Tennessee. We're no different than anybody who has rosters and lost games they shouldn't have lost, or lost games they could have won.
Preach it.
would make you the best team in the league. There's only one way you can be the best team in the league, and that's by being the best team in the league. So that part, let's throw that out. Hot takes, terrible, 1. That just gets a 1 on the scale. There's a standard for that, and we did not meet that standard. Regardless of roster, got to play games. So the best team in the league, no. At the very least, Texas served notice. That will be a factor in the SEC. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can say what you want about playing against Georgia, but the way we built this roster, the way that we can play in the trenches with these teams, and frankly, I think this last game against Georgia was huge for displaying that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'm all over that. So, yeah, you get a 5 on one end of it, you get a 0 on the other end of it.
So that rounds out somewhere to like a 3. He's buying in about a half of that. So, Justin, do you think this is a hot take? Is this a scorcher? Is this unrealistic? Or what do you feel on that one?
I'm not disagreeing with Drew Kelson. That ain't going to happen, especially when he's right. Hey, you play the games to win. He sounded like Bill Parcells. Hey, you are what your record says you are. You're no more and you're no less. And no matter how well Texas played in that conference championship, no matter how much they dominated in the stats, it didn't come out in the end of the score. And you got to give some credit to the Georgia legislative trying to pass something that made Texas go back to the Big 12 because they lost that game. But it was really just a way for him to like build up his Bulldogs for his little 5 minutes that he gets in front of the board. I thought that was interesting. Not near as soft as Ohio State's congressman planting a flag in the middle of a field, a felony, which I just, buddy, I got no take for that.
Oh my gosh.
I'm with Drew on this one. The best teams, you win. If you're the best team, you're going to win it. If you're not, you're second, which is just like everybody else. So they got to do it on the field.
Yeah. LC, could you pull that one back up?
Yeah, you got it.
So LC, I'm curious, what is your take? We can just go on to the next one. So this one, hot take from D Nasty here, and we'll start out with LC. So I guess obviously he's talking about Arch Manning. So the argument here, the theoretical would be Texas has Arch Manning. They beat Georgia the first time. They win the SEC championship. LC, how hot of a take is that? I
mean, I don't know. I think this is we have one of the most maligned quarterbacks by his own fan base, I think, in the country. I mean, the kid is an excellent quarterback. I think people really forget what this team was before Sark and before Quinn. And honestly, if you're going to go back and say that you would not take the ride that we've had over these last 3 years with that quarterback, I don't know that I can really appreciate anything that you're saying beyond that. Does some of Quinn's mistakes, have they affected games? Maybe. But I got to say, like, there are a lot of factors that go into games that go beyond one play. And frankly, if you're putting yourself in a position to have the game come down to one play, then it's most certainly not on one player. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this take. What are your thoughts on this, Justin?
Yeah. Sandman example. If Dart was our quarterback, we'd be undefeated. That goes in the YouTube comment of the year. You know, we've got that awards coming up, people that say the most outlandish stuff just to get a reaction, kind of the Skip Bayless type stuff. That's that one right there. Buddy, they'd have 4 losses with Jackson Dart as the quarterback. With better quarterback play, no. I think Quinn's just fine. Look, in social media age, every single play is dissected. Every single pass attempt is dissected. Everybody has an opinion on every single thing that happens on every single game. And it's, quite frankly, probably too much, maybe a little too much. And that's why Quinn gets hit so hard. The guy makes 12 or 15 incredible passes, including the first half. Dude was dropping dimes. He's going to make 3 or 4 mistakes. He did that. He threw 2 picks. He threw another one that really should have been a pick. The red zone things, you would hope that the run game could help out a little bit to score in the red zone. But Quinn is not the problem. Quinn is definitely not the problem. It's a team effort. And I think Quinn is just fine. I think he's going to be just fine on Sundays when he plays. Yeah, I don't think I don't think the quarterback change. If there were the different quarterback or better quarterback play, they're undefeated. I think that goes sideways.
I see, Justin. I agree. If we had better quarterback play, we'd be undefeated. It's just
In theory,
quarterback Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Is that quarterback? Because I mean, what quarterback are we talking about? What quarterback have we seen that's on that we know can win in spite of the dominance Georgia had on our offensive line, in spite of on the first game, in spite of the trenches or Gunnar Helm dropping passes? Not even to point out a guy like Gunnar Helm, not even to point out those things. Like what quarterback can address not having a run game? A lot of the things we saw Georgia's defense do, I mean, a better quarterback. We would have needed a better quarterback to handle that. The difference is, how do we know that better quarterback is available on our roster? We don't know that. Now we know he's athletic and everything else. My challenge really, and I had a conversation about this really last week. If Arch and that Sark offense was facing Texas's defense, do I feel as though Sark would be able to achieve maximum extent of his offense against our defense? And I equate Georgia to our defense. And I just don't see, there's so many elements, from receivers to blocking to knowing who we want to be in the run game to penalties along the offensive line, putting us in first and second and long, holding penalties, fair or not, that's gone against us. I do not disagree. I do not disagree that a better quarterback would have given us a shot. I'm just saying, we don't know. We do not know. We have not seen Arch play 4 quarters against elite talent. We haven't. We have not seen it yet. We've seen the flashes, and I love it. I think honestly, my theory, Justin, one of my theories is this, Justin. It's like the Manning family is just going to let Quinn ride this out, let everyone berate him, and Quinn's going to go off and ride off to the sunset and do whatever he wants to do. And it just tees it up perfectly for Arch, if he's ready, to rise and really be resonated as the figure everyone is propping him up to be as a backup. So let's just hope Arch is the player we think he's going to be when his time comes, because the way this is all playing out and the way that everyone is just assuming a better quarterback, and Arch is that better quarterback, is the difference. He should be the difference, even if our offensive line is not great next year, if they're not running the ball well, if we're getting holding penalties, if we're jumping off sides. If he has all of those things next year and we're still winning, y'all were right all along, and we should be winning a national championship next year. So I'm fine with it. I want to throw this because
this is exactly what you're talking about, Drew. AR is giving us a super chat here, and I want to thank AR for your time and your money. It's really kind of you. I really appreciate that. And what AR is saying here is that the same people that are saying start Arch will be the same people that will say start Trey when Arch screws up a play. Yep. And it's true. And I think this is one of the things I'd like to highlight here is this goes back to that first take that we talked about, whether Texas was the best team in the SEC. And I think that's the thing, is we have this construct in our mind because college football is an opinion-driven sport that we can look beyond the empirical data and the metrics and say something like, oh, well, if this would have happened, or if this would have happened, we're still this or that. And it just doesn't work that way. That's why they play the games. And for those people that are saying strength of schedule, that Alabama had a really tough strength of schedule and they should have been in the playoffs. Well, that's the strength of schedule. Let's look at their strength of schedule on their wins, but then let's also look at the strength of losses. They lost to an Oklahoma team and a Vanderbilt team. These are not good football teams, guys. So I think coming into all of this opinion-driven sport, which is great, also leads us to lunacy. And I appreciate AR bringing that up because I think that's a very fair point.
Yeah, I mean, growing up here, I've even seen that firsthand. I remember going to a game right after the national title team when they were 5-7. I was probably like 9 years old or something like that. And it was Garrett Gilbert, and people were yelling, put in Case McCoy. And then I remember people yelling when David Ash was quarterback, put in Case McCoy. Then Case McCoy got in, and they hated Case McCoy. And then it was Tyrone Swoops is the guy. Gerard Hurt is the guy. And I think what I've learned, and especially just, I've only been doing this for 3 months, is all these major fan bases are all the same. What did Ohio State do? Kyle McCord's not good enough. Now Kyle McCord's leading the country in passing. Will Howard's going to save us. Oh, Will Howard's throwing, I think, like 25-6. He's a solid quarterback. He was great at Kansas State. No, he's the reason we suck. But it's just kind of how fans.
What about Oklahoma? Hey, we don't need Dylan Gabriel. we need Jackson Arnold to be ready because Dylan Gabriel has a national championship to win next season in Oregon, which, buddy, that's looking better.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that is just kind of a Texas staple, but it's everyone. And LC, if you want to go the next hot take, but we there is one in there that's kind of about Texas fans. And I think
with the schedule, the FPI come out and it's like Texas is 15th.
Yeah, Texas is top.
Why are we talking about the schedule?
I love that we've got some fans in here from some other fan bases. I love that you're hate watching this. Mike G has just been absolutely spamming the chat about the schedule. What I would love for you to do, Mike G, is just do me a favor. And I want you to look at Georgia's schedule the last 3 to 4 years when they were making those championship games. I'll just let me give you a few just from last year. UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Vanderbilt, Florida, which they beat 43-20. A Tennessee team 38-10. And I know you're going to say that, oh my gosh, just because they were so much better. They weren't, bro. They were the same teams as they were last year, the same teams as they are this year. And it's that schedule is the same. So let's not blow this out of proportion. Georgia has had some very easy schedules over the last 4 years. Is Texas's schedule easy? Yes, it is. It's very easy, but they won the games.
Yeah.
All right.
To that point, though, I would say, like, hey, Texas scheduled at Michigan, Texas scheduled at Ohio State. A lot of these SEC schools do not even dare do that out of conference, right? Michigan turned out to be what they are, but hey, they still beat Ohio State on the road, right?
I don't know. UT Martin and Ball State was a real stretch, guys. Yeah. I'm proud of you guys over there down in Athens.
The funny one is when they would go, well, Texas can't handle the week-to-week of the SEC. Well, then Texas comes in and handles literally everyone except Georgia, right? And then they're still dogging and saying they're not SEC ready. But, hey, Bama couldn't handle Vanderbilt this year. Hey, Bama couldn't handle OU this year on the road. And, shoot, Texas beat them 34-3, right? So, I mean –
And Bama almost gave away the Georgia game.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just –
going to forget that?
It's just to pretend that, like, you know, Texas winning these games dominantly means nothing. They can't really help that, you know, and then, oh, they went to A&M. That's going to be their first hard game. Well, now A&M sucks. Well, why? Because Texas beat them. So, it's just kind of how it works. They lost to Georgia by 3. The first game was tough because of turnovers and field positioning.
Hey, real quick, though, the SEC is releasing their schedule as we're doing the show, and they're doing it like week to week because that's programming. That's just how college sports is these days. So that's programming. For people that want to gripe about Texas schedule, which is silly, and say, oh, the SEC did them so they don't play at home in October next year.
Damn. And at Ohio State, guys.
They won't see Austin for 4 weeks in the month of October.
I guess we'll find out about Arch real fast then, huh?
Well, in fairness to Georgia,
not to mention he'll be opening up in Columbus.
Well, LC, if you want to get our next hot take up, it's actually pretty relevant to what we were talking about with conference strength and all that. And LC, if you want to start us off with this one. So this guy, Larry, is saying OU's down, but other than Georgia and maybe Alabama, the SEC is not that much different than the Big 12 for Texas. How do you feel about that, LC? How hot of a take is that?
Well, it's a very hot take in the sense that it's so incendiary. It's gone into dust. There's no reason there that I think that it's a vapor at this point. Guys, I don't want to say that. I just can't. This one's just so stupid. I don't even know that I can wrap my head around it.
Listen, we didn't understand this until this season. I didn't understand it until this season. The depth in this conference is ridiculous. I didn't. You could look. You'd see those injury reports come out. And you'd see 5 or 6 guys, and you're like, man, those are key guys for this school and that school. And they just plugged in new guys. They just filled in the blanks. Like they didn't miss a beat. And if you miss a couple guys on any given Saturday, you will lose in this conference. I love it what Arizona State's doing, but buddy, I just it's a little different in the Southeastern Conference, and that's just from my experience of covering these dudes this year alone.
You're sounding like Ian Boyd right now.
It's the truth.
All right, wait. To that, I'll say Texas always played close games though, week to week. Like Iowa State, Kansas State, those guys would always give them a tough game, even last year.
And they were always very well coached. Kansas State, very well coached. Iowa State teams, very well coached.
But I will say, you know, like for that example, I was just watching back the Kentucky Ole Miss game, and Kentucky didn't even have Marvin Harrison, their top corner. They still beat Ole Miss on the road. So there is a lot of that, and we know the numbers. Everyone sees the draft numbers. And I believe the SEC got 58 of the top 100 recruits this year. So, I mean, that take, I guess, is a scorching 5. It seems like everyone kind of agrees with that one. All right. So this guy, Patty, and this is also what we've been talking about. These are all just perfectly planned. Ahead of schedule from Patty, but now the bar is set here, right? So most of the fanfare will be unreasonable going forward. Texas fans being unreasonable, that doesn't sound right.
This isn't a hot take. This is called reality takes. Remember the movie Reality Bites, LC? This is reality takes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without the good soundtrack.
Oh, well, I mean, hey, Sugar Poppy just gave his hot take about Ian Boyd, actually.
You know what? Now that you're hosting, I'm going to let you read this one.
All right. So
do not break eye contact with the camera.
Okay, this is our sugar daddy, formerly Sugar Daddy. Now he's Sugar Poppy. He's going kind of the Drake route, it seems. Champagne Poppy. My hot take, Ian Boyd would take Paul, and I'm guessing Jake Paul? Oh, no, Paul
No.
Paul Wadlington.
Yeah. Take Paul in a wrestling match, and Drew has a fresh jacket. That's not a hot take at all. That is a fresh jacket.
That's the first thing I noticed. When
Ian taking Paul in a wrestling match, I don't know.
Okay. Ian could, if all 4 of his kids were highly trained little ninjas, and it was like a sneak attack. Like Ian came at him, and then the 4 would flank him from different sides, like spider monkey style. Then I think Ian would have a shot. Otherwise, no.
Well, how big is Paul? I haven't met Paul before.
He's not small. I'm 6'1", so he's probably 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds. Paul's in good shape. Paul's a big guy, and Ian's kind of a little feller.
I met him the first practice I went to, probably about 5'9", 150. I mean, if
Ian ain't 150, but yeah, you're right. You're good.
No way he's 150.
Ian is not 150, even when he's carrying his kids around.
But yeah, I think we're all gonna go Paul Wadlington on that head-to-head there.
We're going Paul.
If it was a wrestling match,
Ian has girth.
A little closer. Ian has girth. All right. I didn't bring that up.
I think Ian's more nimble. He's kind of a slippery guy.
He's sneaky.
Exactly.
He would be prepared. Ian would think through the process. He would be prepared.
Paul is like a spider monkey. Yeah, that's good. It would be Ali versus Tyson of big brain power. I agree with that. These guys are analytical.
Actually, Eric's more like a Cape Buffalo.
This is all right.
I'll see you on the next take. All right, this one from Matty T. A lot of our fan base online are losers. I'm going to say that's a 5. That is scorching hot. Not true. If you don't believe me, go to the Inside Texas message boards. They are not losers. None of you guys are losers. We all love you. That one we do not agree with.
No, Texas fans are so good. They really, compared to other schools, Texas fans are fantastic.
Yeah,
to be honest with you,
way more chill. I will say, so you guys see the Kentucky basketball. My dad went to UK, and he remembers going to Neyland in the 80s, and Kentucky sucked at football. They didn't beat Tennessee for probably 30 years. And he says they were throwing beer on them, telling them they suck, like cursing at them. He's like, we're losing by 35. And my dad, the one thing he said when we moved here and started going to games and stuff is he was like, they're just so much nicer. Like he was like, they do not – people might say Texas doesn't fit the SEC mold. In the regard of not being too rowdy or hostile, that is true. They are not mean. They're pretty welcoming, pretty nice.
And to give Kentucky fans a little bit of credit, I actually hung out with one of the offensive linemen's parents before the Texas-Kentucky game. There was a little thing where the players would come in, and so all the parents and fans were kind of lined up. It was about outside of Moncrief. And terribly nice people from Auburn, Alabama, of all places, really? And big Auburn fans. But the son got an offer from Kentucky. They loved the coaching staff. They liked everything that was about it. I thought Kentucky fans were delightful, to be honest.
Well, you know why that is? It's because we usually suck. So they came in there. We were sitting around some Kentucky fans because my dad wanted to get the alum tickets for that one, of course. And we were sitting around Kentucky fans. They're just goofing around because nobody expects them to win. So that's why they're kind of fun. When the teams have real expectations like the Georgias and LSUs, that's when they're telling you to go F yourself in your face and throwing stuff at you. And they want you to die if you're wearing a different color.
Right. And we're not even in the sport that really brings out the worst in fans. And that is college baseball in the SEC. And, buddy, that's going to be its own adventure, and I'm ready for it.
Drew, I haven't heard your voice in a while.
He's over there in his jacket. He's like,
that's a problem. I saw you in the chat here, Drew, and I'd love for you to get your take on this, because this is from Tennessee Longhorn. He's saying we aren't even scoring 20 points consistently. If that's okay, then we have no standard.
Yeah, if you saw me looking, I was looking over to the side reading comments. So prior to that, though, Tennessee Longhorn said the offense was explosive when Arch played, and that's what people are clinging on to. It's obvious. 1,000%. I just say that our offense looked explosive earlier in the season, period. Arch or Quinn. So when our competition changed, when we had some injuries, when we had the back-to-back of the OU, the Georgia, all of those things started to compile. And I'm not saying Arch wouldn't have been better. There are several plays where we saw Arch would have made a great decision, would have used his feet, could have gotten out of the pocket, could have been using the quarterback draw. There's times where we know he could have been able to do some things in some short yardage situations. I completely get it. But we've still only seen him do it against inferior competition. So it's completely easy to project. But I have to trust the people who are coaching these guys and playing these guys and watching their film and understanding their limitations to or predictability or to scheme when things are happening. But I'm right there with you, Tennessee Longhorn. There's no excuse for not scoring 30 plus with this roster. I just know it goes beyond the quarterback. It goes far beyond the quarterback. It's impossible to watch the film. And the thing is, it's not even a single play or a single thing on a play. It's the offensive line, the execution. It's the offensive line, the penalties. It's random drop balls. There's no specific thing on any given play, but the quarterback is going to take the heat regardless. So I completely get it. I just don't think it's isolated to the quarterback.
Yeah. That is kind of the simple thing that fans typically pick at. Like Carson Beck was getting crapped on worse than anybody, right, for 4 or 5 weeks. Georgia leads the country in drops. It's clear he just doesn't have those guys around him like he has in previous years, right? And like Quinn threw, what was it, 249? There was 2 receivers over 100. Like he was pretty good in the first half, same as A&M. He looked pretty good, and it's just like when you look at the team, when you have 2.7 yards a carry and you have, I think it was 11 or 12 penalties, that you're not helping a guy out. So there is always more to, quarterback play and stuff like that. It's not always a simple fix. And also remember when Arch came in against Georgia, he had that big run and everybody was pointing to. He got strip sacked and he also missed Golden underneath. So, these coaches, like Drew's saying, they know what they're doing. They'll know when Arch is ready.
And don't forget with Quinn too, the 2 turnovers against Texas A&M, Sark said it best after the game. That's my quarterback trying to make a play. The ball gets tipped at the 10. Okay, that happens. He fumbles it trying to get across in the red zone. Okay, that happens. I'm okay with a quarterback trying to make a play, making it, being decisive, trying to do that, because they went 80 yards on the 2 drives to get to that point. And that took it took Quinn throwing the ball, and it took, some doses of Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue as well, which is what you got to have as balance anyway. Yeah, this whole thing with Arch being ready. And here's another thing to y'all's point. He's coming in like special packages. Like when he popped into the A&M game, we didn't realize he was in the game till the ball was snapped. And I guarantee you A&M only knew a few seconds before that. And so it's not apples to oranges in this case.
Well, guys, I would be curious what you guys think. We were talking about this in the group chat during the game. LC, I can start with you. So 817, Mr. Talk Too Much said, what does this have to do with Sark and play calling? Do you think it has anything to do with that? That was kind of the debate in our group chat. If Sark's play calling is more the issue, or Quinn and some of the offensive kind of stalling out problems?
I think the issues when we have had problems have been a combination of execution and playing against good defenses. Honestly, that's my take on it. I know that's a little broad and maybe a 30,000-foot view on these things. And to go back to a little bit of what we were talking about in relation to Sark is not a person that is going to play favorites. Quinn is in the game because Sark thinks that Quinn can win the game. I don't believe for a second that Quinn is in there simply because it's Quinn. If he thought Arch could do it, I fully believe that Sark is a savage and would put him in there to do it. The guy just wants to win and he wants to ball out. And when he's not, he's getting frustrated. So I don't know whether that's play calling or not. I do think that execution has a lot to do with it.
Well, what do you think, Drew, playing the game and knowing a little more?
I think it all goes. I mean, I've said this before. I think in the last year, it's a cycle, right? Like, what can you trust your team to go out and execute? And if Sark can't trust his team to do certain things really well consistently, he's fishing for offense. Now, as fans, we feel like, wait, we've seen us not do well on this particular play or this particular set or getting the ball to this particular guy every week for this whole season. That's the way we feel about it. But Sark watches these guys practice, and sometimes he's just fishing for offense. So I think you can have the perfect play dialed up, but if the tackle misses a block, the guard misses a block, the receiver misses a block, it looks like a terrible play call. And so if we actually went script by script, play by play, and looked at, okay, is it a bad play call? Did someone single-handedly just mess up execution and it blew up the play? Are you behind the chains? Is it 2nd and 17 and the defense is just good enough to know like they're not going to give up 17 yards in 2 plays? Like there's so many different factors that go into it. But if Sark can't trust the offense or certain players or certain things on the offense to be able to call a play he knows is going to work,
yes,
then he gets to guessing on what's going to work. And you just get out of rhythm. And I don't think, I mean, Ian's written about it. I've talked about it. I just don't think we have an identity. It's like, what do we know we can go into a game and execute well and win? Sure, we can hit a deep ball. Sure, we can hit a deep run. Like we can move the ball down the field, but what do we know we're going to lean on to actually execute and win? That hasn't been defined the same every game. It has not been defined. There's just not an identity there. So that's really my hang up. I think it's all of it. Sark can't have confidence in his team if there's certain parts of it that just aren't working, or a defensive player that's just so disruptive and just beating up on a guard or beating up on a tackle, whatever the case may be. If there's someone disruptive on the other side, you have to call the plays around them if you can't trust your team to execute. And we just gotten too far down the rabbit hole on not knowing who we are.
All right, we got a super chat here from Eric Mitchell. He sent us $10. Thanks for that, Eric. And he asked, looking at Clemson's defensive numbers against the run, he's saying they're similar to Kentucky and A&M, and obviously Trey Wisner had career games against both. So I guess, what do you guys think about how their athletes stack up versus some of the other opponents we've played?
I'll interject real quick with Clemson. I've watched this team probably 4 times this year. And the thing I noticed about Clemson that's different than what we saw in the last 10 years, they don't have the defensive front they used to have. And people think, well, it was Trevor Lawrence and it was Deshaun Watson. No. It was the 7 NFL draft picks on the front 4 in that 3-year window. The Christian Wilkins, the Colin Farrells, those are the guys are the main reason I feel like they won those national titles. Of course, you got to give some props to everybody else. And so they don't have those guys anymore. Now they've got athletes over there. They've got actually 2 really good linebackers. They've got some dudes, but in the Makuba Bowl, I think Texas just has a much better defense to that regard. Both offenses, I think, have a lot of similarities, but the defenses are where it's different. And Clemson just doesn't have those big road dogs that they stacked in the middle of 2010s. I mean, you saw it in recruiting. You would see, man, this D lineman from South Carolina went there, and then this D lineman from Florida, and then this D lineman from Mississippi. Dabby used to build that team from the inside out, and then they kind of got away from that. And so right now, that's the biggest difference to me is Clemson's got athletes. They're always going to a certain extent. They do not have that front 4 like they had in the mid-2010s, and I think that's the difference in 3 or 4 wins each season for that program.
Yeah, I mean, and SMU did run the ball quite well on them in the ACC championship game. LC, you got an ad for us?
No, I sure do. What I love more than anything is moving. Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
All right. I
wanted to just bring up the schedule for next year, just because this has been a point of
hot off the press.
Hot off the presses here. So for those of you, I'm trying to do this. This came out pretty quick, so we didn't get a chance to give you a graphic. But we're going to open with Ohio State at Ohio State. Then we have San Jose State. Then we've got UTEP, and then our bye, Sam Houston. Then we get into SEC play, starting with Florida, October 4th at Florida. Neutral site game against Oklahoma, at Kentucky. Then at Mississippi State, and then finally our first home game after September 27th is going to be versus Vanderbilt. Then we've got another bye. November 15th is at Georgia in Athens. We have Arkansas at home, and then we have Tennessee at home. As you were saying, Justin, that October is not great for hot dog sales at DKR.
No, it's looking like a red October. Maybe somebody made a call to Sankey and they were so upset that Texas was gifted such a sweet schedule in 2024 that, hey, let's send them on the road. Let's make them earn it. And I got, this is off to the side, but how long has Texas A&M been in the SEC now? What, 12 years? This is their 12th year, 13th year, something like that. How many times have they played Georgia?
Once. I think 2019 they played them.
Texas has played Georgia 3 times in the last 6 years. I don't get why the SEC refuses to make A&M go up against Georgia. It's maybe there's something in the contract that, hey, they can face the good schools, but they can't face the best schools or something like that. I'm not sure why that is, but man, Arch is going to Columbus. He is going to Athens. He's going to Gainesville, which Florida will be a much better team next year. Buddy, I like it. I like that Texas is I love this when Mac Brown used to do it. He said, screw the non-conference. We're going big. We're going to do it big time. And they'd set up some of the biggest games every year in non-conference. And I love that Ohio State was this year. They had Michigan last year. Texas will host Michigan in 2026, I believe. And so I love that that's the part of it. Then you get to see the Fighting Scotty Waldens, a UTEP on September 13th. Big fan of that guy. He actually coached in East Texas at a small D3, worked his way all the way up to the head coach at UTEP. Absolute stud. But, man, October looks rough. But they did do him a little service. The last 2 games of the seasons are home games against 2 of your biggest rivals, Arkansas and Texas A&M. And then they forgot to put at the bottom, Texas will be in Atlanta the following Saturday for the SEC championship.
Drew, so were you on the team when they went to Ohio State the last time?
Yes.
I believe I played in that game.
He had the fumble that basically clinched the game, James.
I was probably 4. I remember that one from a DVD, though. Drew, what do you think about them going back to Columbus? How do you feel about that?
Oh, man. I heard Columbus is crazy. I think there's a different element, too, with it being – when I say I heard it was crazy, I hear it's crazy in the stands as a fan. I know after we played Michigan, I sent out a tweet just saying, hey, who wants to go up to Columbus next year? Who's riding with me? And the amount of people who said they'll never go again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never. And I got so many stories of my uncle went, my friend went, like somebody went, and it was terribly violent. It did not help that we won the game. They were throwing beers at them, like the whole deal.
Yes,
I've heard all of that happens. Who cares? Like, let's go ahead.
That's college football. That's what it's all about, baby.
I kind of want to see what it's about. Like, if I'm not supposed to go. But one thing I do love about this particular game is I like those early game tests. Right. I'm glad it's the first game of the season. Sark is great coming out. So you'll see all hands on deck for that. Yeah, I like not having a tune-up game. Who you are is who you're going to be, and you got to show up game one. So I'm with it.
I want to just really quickly, I like to do this just as a fine reminder. I want to thank all the people that are watching on Twitter. We've got over 1,000 of you folks, and we genuinely appreciate that. Thank you so much. If you're not going to watch this on YouTube, that's totally cool. That's why we do it on all these other platforms. But if you're watching on somebody's channel right now, give them a like and maybe subscribe to them or a follow. That'd be really helpful for us. It affords us the opportunity to buy nice things. We're trying to get James some new hats and maybe a poster for Drew's wall. There's a lot of things we want. So anything that you could get us would be really, really nice.
Whatever Drew's jacket is, I want that.
I wanted a home game in 2025 in October. So I got cold.
If enough of you subscribe, there will be a home game at DKR in October 2025.
Yes.
I actually I like that we're going through a little road gauntlet. I mean, if you're being fair about it, I mean, look at our schedule the first month, right? I mean, we play on the road at Ohio State. Great. We get some comfort at home. We get some tune-up at home. We get to show up at home. And then we get to be road warriors. We get to lock into a schedule for a month that's going to test us. It's going to challenge us. I like it. I think going on the road and having the schedule work out the way it does, the team there will be a mental shift because you're going to know what you're up against. And to playing on the road is, in a lot of ways, for a player, it's better than it's fun. It is fun. So I'm excited about the way this shakes out. I know we don't get to enjoy Austin in October, but so who are we to bet? What are we going to do, right? Like we get a nice start to the season. Let's go through this gauntlet.
Yeah, we'll have ACL and better on the road in October.
I think
we still got to go to Florida with Lagway. We're going to see Clemens. We're going to see Simmons Lagway duel next year. We still got to go to Georgia. We still play rivals at the end of the season back to back. Like, this is going to be a fun season.
Yeah, the debates in the comments about Arch Quinn will be answered pretty quick. You know, he's going to have to go to Columbus, going to go to the Swamp. He will grow up a lot for sure. Those will be games we'll probably look back.
Florida's going to be so much better next year, fellas.
Yeah, they're finished. You know, somehow pulled out of 7-5, possibly going 8-5 is tremendous with that schedule. So next year they're going to have a lot of preseason expectations.
And Lagway really started clicking that last month when he came off that injury, which I actually thought was going to sideline him for a while, especially with hamstrings. When I saw him warming up before the Texas-Florida game, I thought, man, this dude does not look hurt. He looks good. He looked dang good. Next year is going to be a lot of fun, fellas. A lot of fun. And I think this team plays better on the road, to be honest with you. And look, DKR wasn't always a great place to play home games. It has been in the last 5 or 6 years. Fans have absolutely brought it. But for whatever reason, defense travels, and Sark's bunch just seems to do really well on the road, whether it's Bama, whether it's Michigan, whether it's Fayetteville, whether it's College Station. They just seem to do really well on the road.
Yeah, I mean, he's had several quotes about that, you know, that have been kind of headline grabbers. Like with him saying he relishes the villain role. And you do see that, like, walking into Bryant-Denny. They were, you know, double-digit favorites, if I remember correctly. Then College Station, that seemed like almost a get-right game for them, which you wouldn't think. But that first half, it felt like, oh, this is, you know, 2023 Bama script almost, the way that game started for the first couple of quarters there. But, yeah, we're about finished here. But obviously huge news in the college football world. Belichick to North Carolina. Drew, you played, so I'll throw this one to you. What do you think about Belichick? That's a huge headline grabber, you know, filling in for your old coach, Mac Brown at UNC. What do you think about that fit and how that might work for Belichick?
It's a headline grabber. You know, there's obviously a history there. There's obviously – what's interesting to me is Bill Belichick was known for being very strict, he had a way about going about himself in the NFL. And he did consider doing a lot with less, you know, as far as how he succeeded and wouldn't tolerate certain types of players or certain standards. But everyone knew when they walked into that building what the standard was. They met that standard and they were able to win several championships, whether they wanted to be there or not. There are guys who could not wait to get out of New England, and there are guys who would go there knowing they were willing to suffer a couple years to get a ring. That's what came with Bill Belichick. The difference here is these kids are not locked into a contract for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you get to, and not looking one way or the other. I mean, there are other environments I'm sure certain kids can go and play under and not have to deal with being coached in the way Bill Belichick does. Or if he doesn't have the soft skills and the balance and the way of connecting with parents and families and understanding recruiting and how this can get grimy, I think he's going to miss the major part. A lot of fans and a lot of people from the outside looking in thinks it comes down to money, or it solely comes down to money, or it comes down to money and maybe clout or names. You still have to have a team. Like, guys still want to win games. Guys still want to play with other players who are great and be a part of cultures that are great. And I think the teams that have really strong player-driven cultures are the ones that are going to succeed this year. The coaches that are a bit more loose, balanced, and able to be a hammer, but also be able to let guys be natural and be themselves, I think that's helpful. I just don't know, based on history of what I understand, to be Bill Belichick and the way he likes to operate his program, guys can bounce. And they can literally bounce. They can endure you for a year and say, this ain't for me, and leave. And I'm anxious to see if he has the skills to balance building a culture that can take coaching, but also kind of cater to some of the things that sometimes it's not even the players, it's the people around the players can make this a very challenging and just a tough thing to manage. So we'll see. I don't know if he's the guy, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to kind of juxtapose that with Mac Brown's years there.
But also, you got to think of two really key points before we get out of here on Belichick. Number one, when they asked Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, and Julian Edelman just kind of off the cuff what they thought, it was unanimous. Hell no. Yeah. This is not going to work.
I saw that.
Especially for a 74-year-old that I don't believe has ever coached at that level before. Secondly, you got to think that 24-year-old girlfriends gave him some young man energy, because they'll add some years to your life if you do it right. And so I think this is him just impressing old girl. He's like, you know what?
I still got it. She probably doesn't know what he does.
Old girl's gonna upgrade if she hangs around that campus too long.
It ain't gonna be good.
Another Drake May comes by. It might be.
It'll be like Step Brothers. It'll be like Dale trying to tell his dad, what if old girl walks in?
Oh, God. All right, guys, on that note, make sure you're subscribed, all right? A lot of you might be watching and not subscribed. Check, below for us. Click out. Make sure that box turns from subscribe to subscribe. Tell 5 friends. Tell friends that hate Texas, Arkansas fans, A&M fans. Let them hate watch us like these Georgia guys have been tonight. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow us on Inside Texas on Twitter and on Instagram. And thank you guys for being along for the ride of my first ever hosting. Hope I didn't bomb too bad. Everybody have a good night, and tune in next time.